Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Old Busted Hotness. Today we're just gonna dink around a little bit with the SU carburetors and the valve cover. It's been extremely hot here, and I just have been hard to get into the shop. So first off, long ago when we first refreshed these SU carburetors, we had to put little ring seals on them because the bushings and everything are so shot and the shafts are so shot that we were getting vacuum leaks. So we put a little O-ring on each side of it and sealed up the carburetors real nice. But that O-ring has since shrunk over the years, and I cannot find a replacement O-ring that is the same size as the ones we found. So I'm just gonna go ahead and make another groove beside it on both ends, and we'll have two seals running it. And I've countersunk this shaft enough to fit the new O-ring so that I have just enough sticking out to seal against the bushings inside the carburetor. It makes it run real nice, or hopefully will make it run real nice. So here I'm doing the other end of the butterfly shaft, and on goes the new O-rings. I'm going to leave the old O-rings on there because they help center the shaft so we don't get any more rubbing. And then on to installing the actual butterfly. Now I've always wanted to do this to these carburetors, and since you can purchase these shafts brand new, I figured it was time to do a little bit of a modification to help these old SU carburetors breathe a little better. So you can see with the new seals on it, it hugs in there and gets a nice vacuum seal, so I won't have any vacuum leaking past the butterfly. As you know, these Ventura carburetors really rely on vacuum and velocity because they have to suck the fuel up from the needle valve that sits at the bottom of the carburetor. So this is just pre-fitting and pre-testing the butterfly. Make sure it fits in there nice and snug. There's a lot of adjustment there. There's a lot of play. As you screw the bolts in, you can very easily get that out of alignment. And finding this time when I put them together, I had a little bit side-to-side motion that I didn't like. So I took some washers and bored out the center just a little bit so that they could take up some of that play so the butterfly doesn't move side to side inside the throttle body. Alright, so there's the washer with a little bit bigger hole so that it fits over the shaft, over that little shoulder right there. That will take up the play when I assemble the carburetor, so that shaft is not allowed to move side to side when the butterfly is opening and closing. There's a lot of little pieces. Anybody that's taken apart an SU carburetor, they have a lot of the stops and mechanical things that keep the butterfly from turning too far because you want it to open up and stay in the openest up position. And then I went for the big modification. Now I've seen this done on newer throttle bodies where you take and cut half the shaft off and just bolt the butterfly onto the shaft, the half that's remaining, and that way you open up the orifice or the opening past the butterfly. You get better, cleaner flow. Now with SU carburetors, this could be really bad or this could be really good because I'm changing the speed of the airflow going past the needle, sucking up the fuel by opening it up a little bit. But since the car always ran really rich, and by adjusting the float bowls, or the float levels in the float bowls, I can richen up these carburetors if this leans them out. But I'm hoping, because I'm running bigger pistons, I can kind of compensate for that, because the pistons are going to be sucking in more air anyway. So this is just taking off a little bit material so that it gets a cleaner and a smoother flow and an easier flow through the carburetors. Here I'm just grinding off the back of the new screws, or the new bolt, so that when I bolt the butterfly on, they'll be smooth to the back of the shaft. So I'll have a nice even flow around the butterfly. And there's actually a contoured edge machined in from the factory on the butterflies around the edge of it, so that it fits into that carburetor throat really nicely. And I didn't have to mess with that. I was thinking of thinning it out and doing that, but I didn't go that far. Here's the test fit of the new bolt out of the thing, so I can see that how smooth it is on the back side. There we go. No extensions out. But you can see that I've removed some of the shaft, and so now I'll get a better flow through the carburetor. And for the final assembly, and I actually rotated the whole assembly 180 degrees, so that will make it so the butterfly is being sucked into the shaft when I'm at idle. The stock direction, the way I cut the shaft, the butterfly would have been sucked away from the shaft. So you can see how with a vacuum on it, that butterfly will be sucked towards the shaft. Normally that's clocked 180 degrees off, so that the butterfly would be sucked away from the shaft during idling. So I was able to just rotate it around. Oh, of course I put the thing in wrong the first time. Those definitely have a direction, as I explained earlier. They're radiused the right way, so they close really well. But this means I have to put the screw through the carburetor into that shaft, instead of just being able to screw it into the back like normal, which wasn't as difficult as I thought it was, because I got Allen screws, and so you just stick them on the end of the Allen wrench, and into the carburetor they go. So anybody that's ever had to play with SU carburetors, there's many different little adjustments. The float level, the piston going up and down inside that chrome bowl right there, the needle valve, the needle being placed correctly inside the carburetor, the needle seat being in the proper position, because when these carburetors were made back in the 70s, the molds, or however they made them, weren't very accurate, and so sometimes the needles will hit inside the needle seats and drag. They won't be centered, and so they had to make these special recentering pieces so that you could offset everything and get that needle to hit right down in the middle. So, and then there's a spring inside that bowl that returns the venturi down, and those springs wear out, so they don't drop evenly, or they don't rise evenly. And if you get any kind of a vacuum leak on them, they of course don't rise up and open up the needle valve to let more fuel in correctly or unevenly. So there's all kinds of adjustments. There's all kinds of videos on how to do it. When we redid these originally way back when, we went through everything and adjusted everything and got new needles. And so for like 6 months to a year, the car ran really smooth and really good. But boy, these carburetors are just a constant. You have to just keep constantly keeping up with them. There's even oil inside up there in the top that you have to keep filling. Make sure it's got the right oil levels, or your venturi thing will open up too fast and you'll lean out and bog the motor. So most of that is pretty good right now. I kind of went through and refreshed everything, but I'm not going to do another video or show a video on how to do that, because it just takes too long, too boring. Here you can see I got the butterfly nice and secured in there. Open and closes nice and smooth. Actually get in there and do a little extra tightening on this side once I get it in. So that should just get me a little bit more airflow. My new washer in, all the stop plates, start and stop locations, the throttle lever, the choke lever. These do have mechanical chokes. And of course, got to reassemble all those little pieces and parts. Get one of those backwards or wrong and it won't work right. But that's like any carburetor. There's the throttle lever, which attaches to all the mechanism that goes into the car to get to your throttle pedal or accelerator pedal. And the final nut that holds it all together. The return spring, I just never bothered to take it off. So it'll be interesting when I get it running to see if this car runs rich or lean. I want to try and get an O2 or a wideband sensor on it so I can see what the fuel air mixture is doing. It just opened up that carburetor just a teeny bit. So we'll see how that runs. So while I was rebuilding these carburetors, I thought, let's repolish up the float bowls, or at least the covers. You ever wondered how you see some of them SU carburetors all chrome and shiny? Well, it isn't too hard. First you take the bowl off. Of course, I don't have a bench grinder or a bench buffer, so a drill with a wire holding it on works just as good. A little bit of Mother's aluminum polish, a nice polishing wheel, and off you go. If you really want to get them polished up, you got to sand them, and then you got to wet sand them, and then you got to wet sand them with a really like 2,000 or 3,000 grit sandpaper, and then you do the buffing. But these carburetors had been buffed out a little while ago. We'd never really buffed them. We cleaned them up real good last time, but I never really buffed them. So then it's just a matter of getting the speeds right and just going over it. And the longer you spend doing this, the shinier they'll get. They are just aluminum, but they polish up real nice. And then if you want to keep that polished look, you have to clear coat them. So I think I have about a half hour to 45 minutes in each one, just to kind of bring the shine back. You can see that the polish definitely takes the black stuff is the old aluminum, just takes it off, gets you to a nice clean surface, eliminating a lot of the scratches and stuff, the imperfections. There's dense and deeper scratches that I didn't bother taking out, and that's what you'd have to do with the sandpaper if you really want a nice mirror finish. And of course you could wipe it off with a cloth that isn't going to re-scratch it as you're wiping it off, but I just kind of wanted to put a little buffy shine on them. Didn't want to spend too much time on it, especially since I wasn't going to clear coat it to keep them that way, and they just air oxidize and get dull again anyway. But just so you know, so you can see they are polishable. Of course you can't see it right now, but just make sure you get all the polish back out of anything. You don't want it inside the bowl or anything. Clean them up real good afterwards, and they'll look nice and shiny for about a year. So there's a look at them all nice and cleaned up and put back on the engine. Not perfect, but definitely nice and shiny. So if you remember back when I painted the block, I had the valve cover on, and I just painted the whole thing. So I thought, let's get the Nissan back out and the two lines back out. So basically you mask off everything you don't want to hit with sandpaper. And then you find the right size block. Nope, that's not the right size. Nope, that's not the right size. There we go. Perfect. And I used some 400 grit wet sandpaper, or wet dry sandpaper. Got it nice and wet. Got everything wet. very slowly, very carefully. Just went in a little round motion. Last time we did this, I had a machine shop with a mill, and we actually milled off the top of this because it wasn't very flat. Over the years it had gotten dinged and dented. So now, since it's so nice and machined off, I was able to just take the sandpaper and a block of wood and just sand away. And it all came back. I didn't even have to, I could still, when I'm done, you can still see the machining that we did last time. So it's like I didn't even paint the valve cover. Just got to be careful not to hit the outside edge where I've got the tape. Try and just clean off the lettering and the high points. Kind of brings it all back to life. And one more little piece to do in there, very carefully not to hit anything that I didn't want to sand. Get all the old paint out in between all the lettering. Kind of packs down in there from the sanding. And there she is. And I guess we decided from your guys' comments in the videos, I'm gonna take the outer pulley off. So I'm back at the secret machine shop where I was doing all the press work for the pistons. And first I cut half of the outer pulley off, and she's gone. And then I go in and I take the rest of the back half of that pulley off. And there it is. And thanks for joining me on another episode of Old Busted Hotness. Next time, we will install the motor. Isn't she a beauty? Need to do something about that header though. Okay, until next time. And remember, you can always go back and watch my previous videos on how I took this thing apart. So, thanks.